Paul's letter to Philemon is his shortest letter. And when you take a look at it, maybe just like my kids, you're going to be shocked and surprised by how short it is. It's very different than any of the other letters that Paul wrote. He tends to start out with doctrine, unpack that, and then he'll spend the second half of his letter applying that, showing you how to live those things out. But Philemon is a very personal letter, very specific letter that Paul is writing probably around AD 62. It's more than likely he was writing that probably around the same time that he wrote Colossians and Ephesians. And it's probably took place after his imprisonment in Rome, his first imprisonment, which we read about in the book of Acts. But the letter, it's got three main people that you want to focus on. The first is Philemon, who was a wealthy, successful guy who was part of the church in Colossae, and he may have been one of the leaders there. But then you also have Philemon, and then you have Onesimus. And Onesimus was a servant in Philemon's household, but he ran away. He may have stolen some things. He ran away and is not such a good guy. But we're going to find out more about what happens to him. And he finds himself in Rome, and there somehow runs into Paul and becomes a Christian. And as they get to know each other, Paul and Onesimus, they find out we have this common connection because Paul knows Philemon. And so that's going to kind of set up the chain of events as you read the letter. And Paul is put in an interesting place. He's discipling both of these men, and he has to really challenge both of them. First, Onesimus, a runaway servant, is challenged to go back to his household and make things right. But then also Philemon, this is the main part of the letter, is Philemon is also challenged to welcome his brother in Christ, his servant, back into his household. And Paul's so committed to seeing this reconciliation happen that he says, I'll pay whatever debts, whatever problems that he created. I want to help him make those things right. And so it's really this theme of reconciliation throughout the letter. This is what you're going to be looking for, because the culture would have said that Philemon, just punish your servant. It was not uncommon for these types of servants to be crucified as an example to other servants. They could be treated very poorly in those households. There are four things that I want you to watch for as you're reading through the letter. The first thing that might pop in your mind is, depending on your translation, you'll see that Onesimus is referred to as a slave. And in this time, in that culture, what was slavery was more like, we could call it a bond servant or indentured servitude. It was not like the chattel slavery that we are very familiar with here in America, where slaves were people who were captured. It was based on your race. This is different than that. There is a little bit more like an employee within that household. And after 7 years, they could receive their wages, and then they would be declared a freedman. So a little bit different. That's maybe something that you are wondering about as you come across that. The next thing I want you to watch for is watch for God's sovereignty. It's amazing because Paul is connected to Philemon, and Philemon becomes a believer, and that all happens probably 10 years before this letter is written. And then Philemon has this servant who comes along, who's working in his household, then probably steals some things and runs away and tries to get as far away as possible. He goes to Rome, massive city, wants to disappear, but God had other plans, and he ends up getting to know the Apostle Paul, who knew Philemon. And so as you think about that, you think about how powerful God's sovereignty is in working in the lives of all three of these men. Third thing to watch for is God's power to transform lives. Onesimus's name, actually, it means useful, but initially he's useless. But as he comes to know the Lord and Paul disciples him, there's a great transformation that takes place. In fact, in Paul's letter to the Colossians, he writes about Onesimus, and he says he's our faithful and beloved brother. And then later on in church history, we find out that There was a leader of the Ephesian church his name was Onesimus. It's probably the same guy. And one of his contemporaries, he says, Onesimus, your bishop in this world, a man whose love is beyond words. My prayer is that you should love him in the spirit of Jesus Christ and all be like him. Blessed is he, God, who let you have such a bishop. So Onesimus is transformed, and we get to see that happen. The fourth thing to watch for, and this is the big one, is God's power to transform relationships. Philemon and Onesimus are reconciled. Onesimus and the church, the people that he knew in Colossae, that he was reconciled to all of them. They were welcoming him back in to the household and now to the family of God. And so you see their relationships reconciled. And that points us to how Jesus reconciles us to himself. The reason that Philemon and Onesimus could experience reconciliation and pursue that is because both of them had been reconciled to God. And so there was a vertical reconciliation that then moved out into horizontal reconciliation. It reminded me of Galatians 3:28 that says, there is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is no male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. That's Galatians 3:28. And so as you think about that and read Paul's letter to Philemon, you'll see how it points us back to Jesus.